This podcast is brought to you by UConnect, the creator of the first all-in-one virtual career center. Scale your impact and engage more students with a platform that puts all of your career resources in one place. Hey friends, welcome back to the Career Everywhere podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Metzger, and this week I'm excited to welcome Chris Entringer, the Career Services Coordinator and Enrollment Advisor at Northeast Iowa Community College. In this episode, I talk with Chris about how career services can support and improve retention. Chris and I discuss what career services looks like in a community college, what initiatives his team has launched to improve retention, how his team is structured in an integrated way, and more. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. And this is a great venue for colleges and career services across the country. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're here. And I'm excited to talk to you today about kind of how career services can support student retention. And I'm also excited to have the community college perspective represented. You're our first community college guest. So just thanks for being here.
Yep. Thanks. That's awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Before I get into my questions, Chris, is there anything else you'd like to add about yourself, your background, or your role there at NICC?
Yeah, and I give you a little bit of background, hopefully not too much, but when I got into college, I went to a local private college in Dubuque and really didn't know what I wanted to do with my career or my major. And, I was one of those students that bounced around pre-med to pre-physical therapy to English writing. And then I always say I took a sociology class of all things, sociology, what's sociology? One of those gen eds. But I really enjoyed the instructor. I enjoyed learning about social interaction and how all that works. And it's just kind of fascinating me. So I kind of got trial by error to try something. I learned about that career. So I remember my dad, a pretty conservative guy, a technical guy, and worked in the cable industry. He said, what are you going to do with sociology? I said, well, there's things I can do with that. So I went to the University of Dubuque Library in Dubuque, Iowa, and they had back then, early 90s, they had a sea of college catalogs. So looking through catalogs, and then I thought maybe guidance counseling, maybe being a sociology professor, but then I found there's a post-secondary education higher ed program at University of Northern Iowa, which is down the road from Dubuque. And so I think I'd like to do that. I think I'd like that interaction with students, and I checked out the program and really loved the program. And so I got my master's in post-secondary student affairs. And then how I got into the community college, really, I took a class called the community college at Hawkeye Community College in Waterloo, Iowa. And boy, it just opened up my eyes to see, I think I'd like to work in that setting, really making a difference with students, making a difference with those types of students and college students in general. But I really like that idea. And I remember I joked about, colleges are all over the country and I could work anywhere in the country. And then I ended up in my backyard at Northeast Iowa Community College. So I did an internship at NICC, summer of 95, I can date myself, and that was a great experience. It kind of got my foot in the door. I got to really see the career, and my role was really career and advising. So and I'll talk about it a little later, but I had kind of a dual role with career services and advising, and I've really had that role ever since up till now. So it's been a great run. I've enjoyed the ride and I'm enjoying all the technology things that are changing in our midst as we speak. So
yeah, sounds like it's been a very interesting career journey for you, but you landed exactly where you needed to.
Yep. So it's been a good place to work here. So
awesome. Well, before I get into my more specific questions about our topic, I do want to kick us off with a question I ask all of our guests, and that's, what does career everywhere mean to you?
Okay, that's a good question, right? So I thought about this a little bit too. And, I think to me, personally, I always think about the celebration of career. So celebration of everything career. And what does that mean? I think making that investment in your students, whether it's in a classroom, and I talked about that power of one. So every student you meet, really invest in that student in terms of, and students can tell, they can tell if you're invested in them, you're interested in what they're doing, even if they're undecided or they know they wanted to go for nursing and you're helping with resumes. I think they know that you're really invested in them. So I think really celebrating that with the students and really celebrating that with your college too. So I think that's infectious. I really try to bring that forth in our college here at NICC. I always kind of joke about doing walkabouts, do walkabout around the campus and really promote career services. And I'll give an example of when a student comes in, and introducing them to maybe our support staff and say, hey, this is Jane Smith and she's looking to go into nursing. So really introducing that student, or you're going to the library and introducing them to Victor, our librarian. And then it really gets your colleagues invested in students too. So I think on that high level, thinking about that kind of high level thing, philosophical, but I think that celebration of career is important. I think it really helps drive what you're doing at your colleges. And I think it really helps to motivate you to really remember you're here for the student, right? You're here to help them with their career and then with prepping for the job market as we do that too in career services and really having a good career when they leave. And even to the point where, always have that door open. So a lot of students, they may stop out or, I'm always that person, that celebration of career. Hey, keep in touch. So I really love it when students, maybe they stop out for different reasons, and then they contact you in the future. Hey, Chris, I'm looking at coming back to college. And then you make that connection that way too. So celebration of career is a broad philosophy on that. So
Yeah, I love how you worded that it's a celebration of career because it really is something worth celebrating. Like it takes a lot of time and energy to figure out what you want, to figure out what you want your career path to be, and then to make it happen. Like it should be a celebration.
yeah, so kind of have that mantra every day, come to work and be excited about that, making a difference in people's lives, right? Because
Yeah.
that's really important. So
Yeah, what a privilege, right? That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. Well, now I'd love to dig into our topic today, which again is how career services can kind of support retention. So at a high level, like what are your thoughts on that? How can career services help support retention?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think retention is sometimes hard to find a grasp on that. I think career services, and I'll intertwine this later in the talk here, but I think career services oftentimes I say when you need us. So I think really, really getting to know your college support staff, your advisors, faculty. I think a big part of retention, I think, is really getting those referrals. So if a student's really struggling, and maybe a student's doing our nursing program, we have a really great nursing program, but they really struggle with the clinicals and they're deciding to change their major, so that's a real, boy, it takes their breath away. What am I going to do now? So I think having our staff, whether it be faculty or advisors or admissions, really getting those referrals to send those people to career services so we can help them reevaluate and re-gear what they're going to do. And a lot of times in my role, I do advising too, which is really nice because sometimes that really complements things. So if you're looking, sometimes students think like, boy, I'm changing my major, I'm going to be, way behind in this and that. But you start looking at their credits and saying, well, actually a lot of your credits count towards this degree. So you're really not that far out. So I think any way possible or ways you can be a part of that puzzle or part of that retention puzzle, I think is to getting those referrals and really being a part of all the processes that you do for retention. I think career services should have a piece in that puzzle. And we have lots of initiatives we have at the college, and I could speak to those too. But we have an early alert system for students that are maybe not performing as well in their classes or having problems. We do a really good job of reaching out to students who are not attending their classes. And we work with at-risk student groups. We get reports about activity in their classes. So there's a lot of work amongst our integrated model, which I'll just also talk about. But a lot of really heavy work goes into that, especially early in the process, and really making those connections with faculty. And then career services part of that is really supporting that student that's maybe changing their program or they're looking at dropping out of school. So really supporting those multifaceted processes that we do at the college for retention. And those are just to name a few things. I'll talk a little bit later about our career hub, which we're also looking at some retention efforts on that too. So
Cool. Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense that career services really could play a major role in retention because if students feel like they're on a clear path, there's a goal at the end, there's light at the end of the tunnel, there's again, a clear goal, a clear pathway, it would be so much easier, more fulfilling to continue with your classes, to continue staying in school. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, you're our first community college guest. So I think to provide some context for all of us, can you just share a little bit about what career services looks like in a community college environment?
Sure. We're in Northeast Iowa, and Iowa has 15 community college districts across the state of Iowa. And I would say, on a bigger overall, a lot of the career services offices are pretty small. They might be one-stop shops. We're maybe no exception to that. Since my role is I have a dual role with advising, and we have other staff can kind of do some other things. So oftentimes you're maybe not having a ton of staff. Even our bigger community colleges in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, they're not like hugely staffed. So I think it's really important to make yourself known, toot your horn. I think your CEO said, David said that career services is optional. So how do you make yourself known? How do you get yourself out there? So I think it's really, and you have new students coming a lot faster, than a 4-year college. They're moving faster through, whether it's a 1-year or 2-year program. So I think on a day-to-day basis, really doing as much and as best you can with career services at your school. And the more ways you can get yourself known and like I said, toot your horn a little bit, get faculty to know who you are. And then you start thinking, you those referrals, right? People are starting to send people your way. So overall, community colleges in Iowa are typically smaller offices, one-person shops. I will say that we do a good job of keeping in touch. So if I have a question, I can reach out to other community colleges, career services offices around the state. We have a state professional organization. We just started a new organization, a new grouping of all of our career services departments from across the state, from all the community, most of the community colleges. And that's been really fun. Seems like not that long ago, I was the newbie and now I'm more the veteran. So going to these meetings, with new career services people, I think that's really valuable. Another note, I think it's important too to think about the community colleges. We work pretty closely with our transfer colleges, so the state universities, the privates, and we have an organization called the Career Professionals of Iowa for the state of Iowa. So that's a professional organization for career services. So I'd really encourage colleges or areas to think about having if they don't already, have a professional organization that's made up of your career services people from the community college, from the privates, from the universities, because that's been a really great organization too. And as far as helping support career services in general, but also helping, we can learn a lot at the community college from the 4 years, and they can also learn from us. So I think that trade-off has been really, really strong in the state of Iowa for community colleges. So
Yeah, that's great that you have those peers you can kind of bounce ideas off of, share best practices with. That's awesome.
So Career Professionals of Iowa, CPI. We even have a college in Northwest, spread me wrong, but Northwest Missouri State. So we have some colleges in Missouri that join our group too. So they come up over the border. So that's kind of fun too, to meet we let some of the border schools sometimes from other states come and participate in our conferences and stuff like that too. So
yeah, you may as well. The more the merrier, right? Hey friend, if you're enjoying this podcast, I think you'd really like the Career Everywhere newsletter. Every Thursday, we'll hit your inbox with Career Everywhere related articles, videos, podcast episodes, and more. Our goal is to share best practices and strategies directly from the innovative career leaders implementing them every day. Join over 1,000 other career leaders and subscribe today at careereverywhere.com/subscribe. Okay. So again, you were just kind of talking about your team a little bit, and you mentioned in our prep call that your team has an integrated model where multiple departments are working together. Can you tell me a little bit more about that model and how it helps you support retention?
Sure. So in 2017, the fall of 2017, the college pretty much thinking student services, right? So we developed an integrated model. So we were kind of moving towards that prior to 2017, but the college really sat down and student services really looked at, how can we be more of a one-stop shop? How can we support students better in that sense? And part of it, is how you're set up building wise, right? So I remember in the past where we weren't that far away, but financial aid was a couple blocks down, and you had made a contact that way. But so with new construction, and we have our main campuses are in Peosta, Iowa, and then Calmer, Iowa, so way in northeast Iowa. So each of the campuses has gone through some new construction. So we have our student services are all constructed, so we're all pretty much in one area, right, on each campus. And integration, we're one college, but we have the two main campuses, and then we have centers. And integration really tries to integrate all those entities, but especially the two main campuses. So think of the community colleges in Iowa. We're the longest geographically in terms of Calmer and Peosta distance. So how do you best communicate? Of course, technology really helps with a lot of that this day and age. So that integrated model, we have enrollment advisors that they do a little bit with financial aid. They help with incoming students. We work really closely with admissions. We're next door to everybody. So I do a lot of collaboration with our staff that are right in our office. Our learning center is close, and our TRIO program is real close by. And we have staff, like our support staff, they may support different offices. So I have support staff that support some career services functions along with other functions. And I think there's a lot of cross training. Don't get me wrong, we do have some specialties. So like we have an advisor that does she's kind of like our finance person. So she kind of has a dual role. I do advising and career services. So I'm kind of integrated in that way. So I think it's really think of that physical location, the one-stop shop. So students get everything done in one area. And then we have staff that maybe hold multiple roles in terms of what they do and functions. from just processing functions to who they work with in terms of students and programs and stuff like that. So it's been, overall a good system. It's, I mentioned before about how we have, as far as retention, we have all those initiatives, right? So we have an at-risk group that we work with. So think of the retention group like certain staff or a lot of staff that are working on that are non-attending students. We have majority of our staff work on the non-attendance outreach. So you think about, well, do you spend a lot of time doing that? I mean, to me, it makes a lot of difference. Sometimes you're kind of like, I got to do this. We got to do this outreach for not attending. But boy, if you can make a contact with a student, find out what's going on, and again, that retention piece, right? Or they maybe need to back out or, maybe start the next semester, or can we adjust their schedule? So that's really been key on that. We identify on our college systems called Brightspace, our college course or classroom system, and we can pull reports off of that. And we have at-risk groups that are pulled from that we reach out to. And then we also have just our normal, regular student lists. So there are assigned advisees or advisors for that, but really concentrating on those at-risk students. And we have parameters that are set up with our college to determine where and who those at-risk students are. And then, so it's a lot of outreach to our students, and early the better, early alerts. And that Brightspace report, that's checked throughout the semester. So we're really checking that at all times. And then even at the point where students can, like the last day to withdraw from classes, we really try to have that process there so they know they can maybe withdraw from a class if they have to, so they don't get a low grade, stuff like that. So I think it's retention. It's like a puzzle, like a bunch of pieces of that puzzle. And how are you going to put the pieces of the puzzle of your services you offer, and then how can that translate into outcomes with your retention? So I think that overall we had some good results with retention as far as those outreaches. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm kind of curious from like a career services perspective, or in your case, kind of both academic advising and career services. When you identify an at-risk student, what happens? Like, what do you do from that career services side?
Well, there would be outreach to that student, would be from our advising staff who are assigned those students. And then it's really that collaboration of me as an advisor or my career services role where we identify that student, especially if they're struggling or if they're struggling on maybe what they're studying. So it's a lot of working with the other academic advisors. And we have advisors that just do advising, but we also have me and another colleague, and then we have a colleague up at our North Campus that we're kind of that career advisor. We do both career and. So it's really connecting with those other advisors to make sure those at-risk students are where they want to be. And if they're struggling, that again falls back to that referral process where whether it's the faculty or especially advisors, they can help identify. We can be as good at retention with the support of our other colleagues at work, specifically people working with those at-risk students. So there's those, and again, I said before, those referrals are really key to keeping those students, making the best effort we can make to keep those students enrolled. It's like you can't get everybody back, but you really, really work hard to retain, right? And retention is put your best foot forward on that. So I think it's really that collaboration piece with advising, I think, is a key part of what we do with retention in our integrated model. So,
Okay. So I'm curious, what specific things does your team do to improve retention?
well, I think, I mentioned before those outreach with those at-risk students. I think identifying at-risk students, really working hard to keep them enrolled, keep them engaged. I think that's the key part of it. And I think just doing our best to keep working on those at-risk groups that we have. I think that's the key part that we do. And I can mention more about our Career Hub. We talked about that too, about how we're looking at do some of that with our new initiative and then with the Career Hub too. So I think up front too, with I think retention, it can even start before they're even on your campus, so to speak, meaning like you have a lot of students that they're maybe afraid to come through your front door even, to come to your college. So, and again, that's that undecided student who really is maybe more risky, right? If they're not sure what they want to do and they're just going to enroll and kind of be floundering a little bit. So we have on the front end, we have students can apply as not undecided, or they can apply under like a cluster. Like I know I want health, but I'm not sure which health program. So those students are all assigned to our career advisors. And then we work really closely with those students to help them and get them enrolled and really work with them really up front. So I think that's a key piece of retention too. So think of kind of like being proactive, think even before they're on your campus, what are some initiatives you can do? We've been doing the undecided applications for quite a long time. Of course, we're always trying to ramp up that process. And we actually started a Find My Path semester. That is a program where students, they come to the college and they're not sure what they want to do. Again, thinking of that retention piece, right? So those students, typically they're the students that are assigned as undecided, but they work with me and our other career advisors. And then we help determine, well, maybe, we can just certainly do career planning with you on your own and kind of do that as a process. Or you can think about joining or entering the Find My Path semester. So what that is, they take a career exploring careers class and a job shadowing class, along with we have like a college 101, a college experience class, and then they'll take like pretty common classes, like maybe a writing class, a math class, psychology. So they're taking pretty general classes to start out with, and then I think that has been a great addition to our college. We've kind of have it on a soft launch. So we started fall of 22, and we'll get about 10 to 12 students in the fall, and then 6, 7 students in the spring. Not a lot of numbers there. We're trying to really ramp that up, but I think it's really those students that you really want to keep and you want to capture and keep them engaged. And we've had really excellent feedback from students that have been in those classes for the Find My Path semester. So think of it that I always tell students, it's like a structured career planning semester for you. So it's a good investment up front, right? So you're not, geez, we don't want you to jump into a dental assisting or a welding or nursing program and you're saying, get me out of here, in October. So I think that is I think as far as career services and a good collaboration with faculty and with our integration model, I think that Find My Path semester is, again, that whole idea that upfront. So think upfront with retention, right? With those students that are making sure you keep them and you're not losing them. And we've had even contacts from students we had a student that graduated and he took the class later in his NICC program, but then he was contacting career services after the fact to get help with stuff. So it's like we make those connections. That class is taught by a full-time faculty who teaches the College 101, College Experience class, plus the Exploring Careers class. But our career services office works really closely with that class and really supports that class. So it's been a good collaboration with an academic faculty class too. So I think that's a really good initiative, and hopefully we're going to increase our enrollment in that in the future. So
yeah, I would love to hear more about that Exploring Careers class. Like, what is typically covered?
yeah, so here's a good example of a Career Everywhere, or they use our website quite a bit. So we're all right. So they're using our career services website. So with Candid Career, we have the videos, so they're using that quite a bit. It's really taking career assessments, learning about job market, and they do the job shadowing part is really done a little bit further in, but they kind of establish their career planning with assessments, with learning the job market. They bring in guest speakers that talk to them. Career Services goes and talks to them, and then a few weeks into the term, the job shadowing or / information interview part, Career Services helps them. They have to do a certain number of job shadows, information interviews, or they can actually visit a transfer college program, so learn about transfer options. So it's really, really getting them to take action. So take a career assessment, go visit with an employer, bring in guest speakers they can listen to and gain knowledge from. And then at the end of that class, a little bit early, but we prep them for a mock interview and a resume. So it gets them out of their comfort zone. So again, that whole idea of those students getting out of their comfort zone a little bit. So it's really, interactive class. I think a lot of good speakers and Career Services. Again, we go in and talk to the class a couple times about resources and stuff like that. But it's a great example of how Career Services can really be engaged with a class. And I like the idea that they're using our website, they're using our resources, they're using our, our Candid Career and other resources we have for that class. So, and really get nice feedback from, students we've had good testimonials and feedback from the class. So it's kind of like they're all in the same boat, right? They're a group, they're a cohort, they're trying to figure out what they want to do as a cohort. So the value in that, right? As a group, we're all in this boat together. We're trying to develop our plan for future career and what they want to study. So
yeah, I imagine it would be comforting to go through that with a cohort of people who are kind of experiencing the same questions, the same uncertainty, trying to just figure it all out. Because, no pressure. What do you want to do with the rest of your life, right?
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, because we do a lot of, I talked about the power of one, a lot of individual appointments, and I really believe in that. We email, we do Zoom, we do, there's meet students where they're at, but, it's really talking through the students. And usually we get a pretty good sense if they'd be a good fit for the Find My Path semester. We really try to help them find that that's a good fit for them. So.
Okay, very cool. You've mentioned a couple times today and also in our prep call about your career hub. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Career Hub. So that is kind of a career everywhere thing, So around that integration time, that fall of 2017, we got a new jobs posting system, and we got a career planning assessment piece that we're kind of, so we want to really try to find a catchy slogan or way to promote like a one-stop shop for students. So hey, let's call it the Career Hub. So the Career Hub is really that one-stop shop to get career planning information, do a job search, find out about resumes. So kind of like, and to our, maybe not our surprise, but in a good way, get caught on at the college. So you start hearing marketing talking about, hey, the Career Hub, or a faculty say, hey, I send students to the Career Hub to look up jobs. So it's like, hey, it's taken off, right? So just in that name of that, we even got to the point where we were thinking about, we're called Career Services. So, but maybe we'll change our name to just call ourselves the Career Hub and not have Career Services. So that kind of debate went back and forth. So then as we got further into that, we saw value in that. We saw value as a career everywhere marketing way to market our services. We have that, Mary mentioned that College 101 and Exploring Careers too, but the college experience class, like we really try to get out to all those classes, and then they access the Career Hub, they access the career planning assessments and all that. So we promote that right as they start at the college for most students. But, that's been on our college's EDU, our website, our public website. But we thought, hey, how do we extend our arm? How do we have more of an outreach to students in terms of the Career Hub? So we're working with our Department of Instructional Innovation and Design, our distance learning department. I wrote it down so I remember. But they're great to work with. The DID office is what they're called. But so they're distance learning, says we have a lot of online courses and programs at the college, but they also support our college class portal called Brightspace. So Brightspace is where students, have their class information. If they're doing all online classes, they access their class in Brightspace, kind of like your internal portal. So, and maybe other colleges, I was always interested if other colleges are using this too. But so I said, hey, why don't we really migrate our Career Hub to create a Brightspace in that Brightspace classroom environment, or so to speak, and then really work up that Career Hub concept from that. Because students, they're in Brightspace, they're in there all the time. We have our student life office has a Brightspace kiosk or page. We have, some clubs and organizations. So our career services team really worked closely with our distance learning team. And we just wrote down like a wish list, so just think big, right? A wish list. What would career services, what would we want in this Brightspace Career Hub? And thinking about how do we expand that reach? So, you think about, we have a lot of we have veteran students, we have Marshallese students, we have single mothers and single fathers, that maybe can't get to campus. So we have a lot of more online programs, and not to mention our face-to-face classes, but how to really reach that arms out further to capture more of those students. So this project was the idea. So within the Career Hub, think of it as it's going to have we have what's called a career lab, and that's going to have information about resume development. It's going to have a mock interview resources, and we're going to have rubrics in there to critique students. So for example, with the career lab, the resume part of the career lab, I might go talk to a class of 40 nursing students, and they all have a resume critique. So we're going to have them, they're going to, instead of emailing me their resume or sending it as a Google Doc, we're going to have them upload that resume into the Career Hub and impart that career lab. And that's going to be a great way to really connect with students through the career lab and provide resources in there. Another cool piece is that we can direct, so like with the Brightspace Career Hub, we can have resources in there that are particular to a certain program. So we can have resources that just the nursing students would see versus other majors, which is pretty cool. So that's going to be a big piece of that. We're also looking at, we're going to have micro-credentialing courses, and those are going to be micro-credential students can pick up. We're seeing if we can really relate those to the NACE competencies so they can get micro-credentialing, little courses they can take to get some credentials. And in part, that may include some of the NACE competencies as far as part of that. So it's that part. We're going to have really looking at maybe like an employer section, for employers, for, have resources for faculty and staff. So it's really that, again, that whole career everywhere concept and that celebration of career, right? To have, hey, this is a spot. And, I think it's important to think big and have big goals. And then, you kind of see where things land. But we really want it to be a college resource, a career services resource for students, that bigger outreach to capture more of our students. We don't want to lose that face-to-face the part either, but really this really opens up that door, right, with technology to provide an online system. It's in our college course system. students are used to using it. And with that, it's really going to influence our NICC public career services page. We're going to migrate stuff from that to the career hub. It's always that old adage, how much do you have on your EDU site that's for current students versus prospective versus alumni? How do you balance that? So I know that's something we struggle with sometimes. What do you have on your EDU site? And are your current students looking at that or not? With some Google Analytics, we found that our current students don't look at the career services page as much as you'd like or that we like. I mentioned so maybe that should be more of a place for maybe alumni or for prospective students. But I mentioned that we drive that a little bit from career services, like with that exploring careers class where they're really active using our career website. But hey, even better now with that Career Hub Brightspace course room portal, that can really ramp up how students are using that system, how they're using career services in terms of a process or a way they can access what we're working with them with. So it's a lot of technology pieces to it, a lot of, and really grateful that we have a really great distance learning department. I'd encourage other colleges or career services, really find those partnerships. And I've listened to some of the podcasts, I think that's really critical, right? To find those partnerships, who you can work with, who you can partner with. Because we really had a good, it's really fun to sit down with our distance learning department and our career services and really create a Google sheet and just write down our wants and needs and what we want to have. And, that collaboration is really great. I think it was really, really enjoyable too. The process has been enjoyable. Now, that being said, we still have a lot of work to do on it, but we're in the early steps, and could maybe share at a later time how it's going and all that. But we're really excited about it. I'm trying to keep that celebration of career with the Career Hub system that we're going to have for career services. So we're looking forward to that. And as far as retention, we're hoping we can really integrate some retention in that. Like, how are we retaining students that are accessing that? How can we? Because the system, it has some really great ways to track things and track usage. And the old days where, we have like a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and you just, mark down, but so this has, and I'm sure other colleges have some pretty robust tracking systems, but we're excited as a small community college to have some really robust tracking of what we're doing in the system that the Brightspace provides. So that's another piece that we really want to help support our retention efforts even at a higher level with the Brightspace hub, and have it be really intentional and have it be real up-to-date information with how we're doing that in terms of retention and just using our services, right? Using career services as far as how we track everything we're doing. So
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool if you could eventually be able to gather all of that data that shows the clear causation relationship between the work that you all do and retention there at the community college.
Yep. But that's certainly one of our goals. When you mentioned this early on, that popped in my head right away when you mentioned that, as far as that's really an important piece of the system is how we're supporting retention efforts from career services. So
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of what you're doing it's really about a couple things. Like, one is kind of engaging the whole ecosystem of the community college to make sure that everybody is involved in career conversations, everyone's prepared to have career conversations. And then secondly, it's also about being really proactive. Like, you're trying to get in front of these students as early as possible, identify at-risk students, help them along, maybe more than others might need. So it sounds like what you're doing has been effective. Like, are you seeing those results there on campus?
yeah, I think so. I think there's some real excitement for the system and all that. I think about that, was it UConn has that career champions, and we're trying, this is our career champion system, right? So, and that whole idea of, that where career services is optional, right? So how do you really got to build that brand, you got to really get faculty engaged in that, and they're key to that, all of it, right? Because they really help drive our students and get that talk around campus. So now the Career Hub becomes a part of the college. It's that I think integration has really helped to, if you think about, they talk about the old adage, silos, where you're siloed, where I think our integration has helped to knock down those silos in terms of student services. And I think that can only help the Career Hub, I think, as a system for our college. If we already have the integration, we have less silos to try to break down to make it a great and robust. And really, we want to make it a great system for it's for the college, right? And it's not just, it's career services, but it's the college's product. You try to think of it that way. Think big picture on that. So
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll be excited to kind of keep in touch with you and see how things progress in the coming years.
Yeah, I'll have to give you some updates how it's going in the future. So
Yeah, please do. So, Chris, I'm curious, what advice do you have for other career services leaders in all institution types who want to help improve retention?
I think, and maybe this is stuff they already know in some ways, but I think it's hard work. I mean, I think you have to, almost on a daily basis, you really have to get to know your constituents around campus, really work the room. I remember talking to a colleague at Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. They're a bigger community college, but I remember them talking about they really work the room, and they have a couple more staff than we do, but they really get out there, out and about within their college. And our campus at Piasta and even Calmer is pretty small. We're pretty small campuses. We can do the walkabouts pretty good, but I think really trying to make those connections, and if you can do it face to face, even better. I know it's sometimes that maybe bigger in universities, but I think if you can make those contacts face to face, that reminded me of our past presidents when he started at the college. They said that he walked around the campus all over the place. All he did was walk around and get to know people. So I think that relationship building is really key. And then how can we support retention? How can we be a voice in that? I think tooting your horn about we want to be a part of that. We want to have that as a part of retention. I think, and if retention is that part where I mentioned earlier about those referrals, I think that is a key component of that. Those referrals to get those students to keep them engaged. If we're end up being the last stop as a connection for the student to keep them, let's try to hold on, keep them in the college. I think that's key. If there are things that can be done even before they get to the college, like I mentioned before, those undecided students, I think that's maybe a different way to think. It's kind of, well, they're not even here with us. How do we retain them? They're not even at the college yet. But I think it's important to think about that. Those undecided students, or those students that are, boy, I'm really gun shy. You wouldn't believe, I have students that are undecided applicants that are, boy, they're super gun shy. It's almost like you really got to do your work to get them to actually come in and meet or engage or talk over Zoom. But I think that's really critical for career services to play a role in that, to get students to build that trust. If they have that trust, I always think that feeling of, students that feel they can't come and talk to you. I work really hard at that to let students know I have an open door. So I appreciate walk-ins or a quick text they send me. I appreciate that because they know that I built that trust with them, right? That they can reach out to you. I think it's being involved in the college. I think I mentioned before about, doing, walkabouts around campus. And, I try to just a nice hello to students, or if you see a student you're working with, like ask them, like, I stop a student that I'm working with, or maybe one of my advisees, and I say, so when are you graduating? How's it going? How's it going? I always ask those questions. I'm also, maybe not retention, but I'm on the keynote speaker committee for graduation. So I get to learn about students that way too. And that's been, they tell their story. So you learn about what does it take to be successful as a college student? How did career services make a difference for them in terms of being, when they give their keynote speech? So I guess I would end with, I think it's really working the room, try to get out there face to face if you can, get to know your constituents, get to know your faculty, get to know your support staff, everybody, right? I think that's really important. And then certainly the trying to work to get those referrals of those students, and really working with your college too. And certainly there's colleges that have systems in place to check, to really research that data. We got to look at that data to determine how we can better retain. So
Yeah, it's good advice across the board, especially the building relationships thing. I think almost every guest on this podcast has really emphasized the need for those partnerships, those relationships, again, engaging the whole ecosystem of a college or university, just making sure everybody is involved in this career everywhere concept, because it's better
yeah.
for students, they'll be more successful, and it's honestly better for that whole ecosystem in general. Okay. Well, Chris, I know we're kind of coming up towards the end of our time here, so I want to start wrapping us up and be mindful of our time. But is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered?
I think it's important to enjoy what you do. I think if that's a career advice, I think it reflects in what you're doing in your job in career services. I think really remember that celebration of career. I think that celebration of careers is key. I think with support staff, with your maintenance people, I think that's all important. I think coming to work every day like that, I think it really makes a difference in terms of the culture. I guess I'd end with what I said earlier, just that celebration of career, and there's bad days here and there, but I think really, really try to be a good, hey, career services. People get to know that reputation or that office or that department, that career services office that is celebrating careers. I think that's really important. So
Yeah, I really love that concept. And as you were just talking, it made me think like celebration of career has kind of multiple meanings. Like you can help students celebrate all the career possibilities that are available to them. But it's also, as you said, about enjoying your work, celebrating your own career as a career professional and enjoying the impactful work you get to do every day.
yeah, and then kind of related to that actual celebration, right? So I really make it to our college graduation, and then and again I do my walkabout. I walk about. I see faculty, but I catch those students, and maybe a student I didn't even work with, but I congratulate them. So I think that's if you can do that, it's really rewarding. I think, and think of that maybe rewarding for yourself, but think about the student, right? That hey, Chris is here. He's here to support my graduation. I think that's the final celebration of that. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it makes them more likely to reach out to you in the future if they need help as an alumnus too.
yep. I said this before. Every time I present to students, I say, So I remember when I was in college, it's like, well, can I go back to my college? I'm graduating. Can I go back? But it's always like, hey, you can always come back and get because we do work with quite a few alumni that come back to the college. And again, sometimes it's that student that stops out, or maybe they graduated and they're still looking for a job, or maybe they come back for. And I keep students' resumes on file as best I can. And sometimes they say, "Hey, Chris, can you get my copy of my resume?" It's like, "Hey, what?" So, they didn't keep the copy of the resume, but I do that too. So I have a lot of that's really fun too. Really having that connection with alumni, and really again that whole idea of keeping that door open if they ever need help with anything. I'll give you a quick example. I had a student that graduated. He's a welding major, and he graduated 3 years ago. Came back, got help with his resume because he was applying for a job at John Deere in Dubuque. So we helped with his resume. So that was a recent one I had. So that's really rewarding, I think, too, as a career services office. Certainly, if you can, and I'm sure many colleges, working with their alumni office again, that partnership or keeping students that whole mantra that hey, you can always come back and get resources or from not just career services, but other parts of the college. I think it's really, really important. If it's, lifelong learning or just they need help with future career plans or job search or resumes. So,
Yeah, that's great. It's as you said, lifelong learning and helping and career services can help facilitate that for sure. All right. Well, Chris, if people would like to connect with you or learn more from you, where's a good place for them to do that?
I have a LinkedIn account. That's a good spot. Just the NICC Career Services page, or we have an email that's careerservices@nicc.edu. So if that's an easy way to remember, if they want to shoot an email, that's our group checks that email. So that's a good place to land. Certainly a friend, I always say friend, but that's a Facebook, but friend on LinkedIn is good too. I enjoy connecting with people. And I've really enjoyed, that because I mentioned before, we look really closely with our Iowa constituents, career services, but it's really great to have that avenue, nationally, right? So I think this Career Everywhere and your podcast, I think it's been great to hear nationally, on a lot of hearing from other colleges, and we benefit a lot from our our in-state stuff, but it's great to hear from other around, nationally. It's been great too. So
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's definitely the goal here is to help facilitate some of that learning and knowledge sharing. All right. So, Chris, to kind of wrap us up, at the end of every interview, I like to do this answer a question, leave a question thing.
okay,
So I'll ask you a question our last guest left for you, and then you'll leave a question for the next guest. So our last guest was Ange Richard of Boston University, and she left the following question for you. What advice would you give to college students who are just graduating and starting their first job?
okay. The first one's not really a real one, but I had a classmate at University of Northern Iowa, and he said his answer to that question was, "I'm going to keep staying in college. I'm not going to enter the workforce. Just keep." No, that's not going to work. But he joked about that. That was kind of funny. But more seriously, I think I'm a big believer in hard work from day one. So work hard. I think it's important to find a mentor, whether it be formal or informal. I think that mentorship is important. I think back when I started, one of my coworkers, Kathy was her name, and we sat down and she went through stuff with me. She went through every college program we went through with a highlighter marker, and that was really my mentor. And so I think hard work, finding a mentor, either informally or formally, or more than one mentor. And then I'm a big believer in asking questions. So whenever I meet new employees at the college or in student services, I always say, hey, and my door's open, just ask me questions. I think and there's a lot to say about that too. They know that you're open just to talk to them. But I think, because I tell students, I still ask questions. I go out and ask questions. So again, that collaboration with our integrated model, I still share and ask questions, information share. So I think those three things, hard work, mentorship, and ask questions are key, I think.
Great. Yeah, that's good, solid advice all the way around. All right. So, Chris, what question would you like to leave for the next guest?
Oh, this one. I thought about this a little bit. And okay. And here, so in short, to AI or not to AI? Or more specifically, what are you doing with AI? What's happening with AI? We've been using AI, with ChatGPT with some resume development and some different processes, and we found value in it. So just curious for the next guest on the podcast, what are they doing with AI? How do they see it in the future? Our college, I mentioned our distance learning team is very, very active right now with how AI is going to affect classroom learning. So I think I'm curious to hear that, if they have any plans or not, or how they see AI, with career services, and how it can hopefully be a positive and helpful resource in the end, right? How are they going to leverage that is my question. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a very hot topic right now in career services and like all industries, honestly.
All over, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast today. This was a fun conversation. I think our audience will get a lot of value out of it and hopefully think about how they can continue to help retention on their campuses. So just thank you for taking the time to share your experience and your wisdom.
Yeah, appreciate the time. It's been great chatting with you, and appreciate the opportunity, and continue to enjoy the future podcasts that you guys do. So it's been a great resource for our college. I'm sure a lot of colleges across the country, and career services particularly. So.
Awesome. Well, I love to hear that. So thank you very much again, and have a great rest of your week. That's all for this episode of Career Everywhere. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit subscribe and rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.